All right, we're going to go live. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. All right, welcome to 5 Live Free Code School with people you don't recognize. So I'm Eric. I'm the instructor. Whether you're going to watch this live or a later recording, and usually we have 3, 4, or 5 students. We've had a couple life situations happen today. I expect someone to arrive shortly, but we have a brand new student, Dana Lopez, who I've known for a while from some previous training. I'm very, very happy to have her here. So Dana, we'll wait on introductions until we have more people, but honestly, I think we should just kind of jump into some material, and then we'll catch Jonas up when he arrives. Here's where we're at, and we'll have a little bit of fun with this. Can you do me a favor and get your MySQL workbench up and running and just bring up that Tequila database?
Yep, I'll do that now.
Excellent.
I'm having a bit of an issue. I don't know if MySQL Workbench is something that needs to be updated frequently.
Here's what can happen, and we'll have you share your screen in a second. When you install, there's 2 programs that get installed. There's MySQL Server, which is the actual database server that, at least on your development machine, sits behind the local host server, and then you can access it typically via port 3306 on your local host. That is just a continuously running computer program that allows you to administer databases. That's what the server is. Outside of the local host and underneath it, the MySQL Server program, outside of that is this MySQL Workbench, and it's just a general purpose utility program for working with these types of servers, right? So the server itself, the MySQL Server, is usually installed as a continuously running program and sometimes need to be restarted. That's part of what can happen. And sometimes, yeah, there's update issues. So whatever it is, we'll debug it. Why don't you go and share your screen and we'll see what's happening. And this will be fun because you're on a Mac, and I haven't done this on a Mac in a long time. So just add to some skill sets. Okay, so I see the icon at the bottom in your doc. What happens when you click on that MySQL Workbench? Let me just look at that for a second. All right. Mac OS 12.5. Scroll down a little bit. Oh, stop. Let's see. Termination reason. Library missing. Library not loaded. Oh, Python. So it needs Python version 2.7 to be installed. Referenced from MySQL Workbench. Yeah, so it looked in that path. It says reason. It looked in the path system library frameworks Python framework versions 2.7 Python. It didn't find anything. Let's keep this open. Don't click OK. And let's look in and around that area using Finder and see what we have installed in terms of Python. So what was that path? Can you put these 2 windows side by side, the Finder and the system library frameworks? Okay, go back to Finder. That's fine. Unless you can get them side by side, that'd be great. Yeah. Okay. Now I think if you go to the top tabs at the top of the screen for Finder and click on Go. The very, very top of the screen where it says Finder, File, Edit, View, Go. Yeah, click on Go and click on Computer. Double click on the HD, the hard drive. Click on System. And then when it said Library, yep. And we should find Frameworks down there. There's Frameworks. Do we have Python dot? Do me a favor, can you change the view to be a list? Yeah. There we go. Okay, so it doesn't show Python at all. So let's see if we can install Python version 2.7. Once you go to the browser and see if we can find that. Okay. All right, scroll down a little bit. Mac installer disk image. Yeah, try that one. And I think if you double click on it, it might even just try to install. This is a DMG file. Maybe double click that bad boy. All right, we have to change the security settings so it would allow it to be installed. All right, so let's Google Mac OS install unidentified developer. Okay, so what does that top one say? Okay, scroll down. Control click it, choose open. So let's go back to that Finder, control click that, click open. Yep. Awesome. I guess that's not the right file. Interesting. Okay, go ahead and close it. And I don't know what an M package file is. So let's look at the README for a second and see what's going on here. This package will install my content. Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you look at that fifth paragraph, it says it's going to install it where we want it to be. Go back to that downloads tab in the browser. Such an old version. I haven't done this before. I've done it on a Windows machine, but not. So
Should I be going for this one or was it that one?
I'll go back to it. Let me see. I don't think you have a 32-bit Mac though. It's been a long time since Mac was a 32-bit machine. Yeah, OS 10.3. I don't think that's it. Oh wait, what kind of Mac do you have? Is it an M1 Mac?
I have no idea, I'll be honest.
Yeah, click on about. Oh no, it's not M1. You know what M1 is?
Mm-mm.
For a long, go ahead and keep this open. If you look at the processor, 2.3 gigahertz, that's an Intel processor. So the CPU inside this computer was made by Intel. And for a very long time, Apple has been buying their processors from Intel. About 2 years ago, after a lot of behind the scenes work, they made their own CPUs and they no longer buy them from Intel. The name of that chip when they released it was M1. And so if you have one of the newer Macs, it'll have an M1 chip, but that means that certain programs won't work on it.
Got it.
That's not a problem here, but just to add some nuance there. Okay, so that's not the problem. It's not that it's new. Okay, all right, go ahead and close that. Let me just look here for a second. All right, open up another tab and just say, Google like how to install old version of Python on Mac OS. I'm a lot more comfortable and knowledgeable with the Windows platform, but how to install older version of Python on Mac OS. Yeah, let's click that first thing. How to install specific version. And you install Python 3.4. Okay, keep going down. So, do you know what brew is? Or homebrew? You're on mute.
Sorry. So I remember using Homebrew early on in the boot camp.
Yeah. It's a package manager, which means that you can use it to install different packages or libraries or even complete computer programs, and it'll help manage any dependencies that those libraries or programs have. Why don't you open up a terminal? Just do shift space bar. Oh, there you go. Type brew. Let's see if. All right, good. You do have it installed. So let's go back to a browser because I don't know 100% the syntax for brew. And go back up to the top of this. Brew install Python 3. Do brew install Python 2 and see what happens. Python 2 is all one word, just like, yeah. So it's connecting to Git. First, it's going to do an update. Every time you use Homebrew, the first thing it does is see if there's an update to the Homebrew program itself, which is kind of nice. And it'll automatically update itself. And if it's been a while since you used Homebrew, that can sometimes take a few minutes.
Yeah, it's been quite a while.
Yeah. You have Visual Studio Code installed on your machine still, right?
Mhm.
Good. Oh, there it is. I see. It's interesting. Your workbench was working last year, right? The
Yes,
MySQL, yeah. I
was.
wonder if for some reason Python got uninstalled. You don't remember overtly uninstalling Python, do you?
No.
Okay.
Would it be, I don't know if maybe I have to update my Mac itself.
Yeah, that's. Oh, did you install a new new operating system on Mac within the last year?
Yes.
That's probably what happened because Macs usually come with Python installed. But frankly, this version of Python is 12 years old. And so I'm almost certain that the version of Python that you get is version 3 instead of version 2. I didn't realize that Python 2 was a dependency for MySQL Workbench. One of the things we may do is we may just, if we can't get this working this way, we may completely uninstall MySQL Workbench and then reinstall it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna update a lot of packages on your machine. But that won't hurt anything. How comfortable are you using Git?
I'll be honest, I have not used it in so long.
Okay. You're going to get to some videos on that pretty soon. And make sure you do all the practical labs that I lead people through on it, okay?
Okay.
Meanwhile, I'll just have a little bit of Gryffindor. Are you a Harry Potter fan at all?
I am. My whole family is.
Very cool. I didn't watch that 20-year anniversary thing yet. It was on HBO.
I haven't either, just because I don't want to ruin the memory that I have of the series, and I feel like it just might.
Yeah.
So eventually I will, just not yet.
Yeah. I listened to all the audiobooks last year just to refresh them all. Okay, so let's see. Warning, no able form of the name Python 2. Okay, so it did the update, which took a while. Fine, we won't have to do that again. Let's see. Let's Google then how to install Python 2.7 using Homebrew. There we go. Let's keep going down. Okay, right there. I don't want to deal with all that. I want to just completely remove MySQL. Do you have any databases that you care about on your machine?
No.
Okay.
No.
Then let's look up uninstall. I actually haven't done this in a little bit. Uninstall application Mac OS. Yeah, let's take the first one. Keep going. All right, right there. Okay, keep going. All right. Oh no, I want to see the beginning of that. What's that? It says all right, keep going. All right, what's that? Oh, okay. It might have an uninstaller. So open the Finder, look at applications, and let's find MySQL Workbench.
Sure.
Applications is in, there we go. All right, so there we go. Go back and how do you access it?
Should I just
Don't do that yet. Let's see if there's an uninstaller. Go back to that browser window. It said, oh, there's no folder. There's just the application itself. Yeah, let's try that. Let's just dump it into yeah, and look, don't delete that. That's the installer.
okay.
Double click it. Let's reinstall.
Sorry if you hear my cat.
Oh, no, gee, I'm horribly bothered. I have 3 cats and I love them all, so that's totally fine. So yeah, drag MySQL Workbench into applications. Let's go to applications and see if we can open it. All right, click OK. That's fine. Do a control click on it. Yeah, try open again. It might be doing it, so let's just give it a minute. We'll give it a little bit more and then go ahead and close that problem report.
This one here.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead and double click the MySQL Workbench application again. Oh. Interesting. All right. Go ahead and click OK. Why don't you drag it into the yeah, send it to the trash. And then send the installer to the trash as well. And then can you empty the trash? All right, now let's go to MySQL Server downloads out on the internet. Now that we don't want the server. So scroll up for a second. Click on the top thing, MySQL Community Downloads. And click on, let's see. Yeah, there you go. And then, yeah, download it. No, thanks, just start my download. Yeah. Well, yeah, I actually like it that people can kind of see what it's like to try to get something like this up and running locally, because it's never a smooth experience. I've never had a smooth experience setting up any relational database management system or server and everything on my local box.
Hopefully it's helpful someone else.
Yep. Did you get any message when you dropped it, when you dragged it in?
Oh, copying.
Oh, okay, good. There we go. You know, the message before was verifying, and I think it was doing that because we didn't remove it from the trash can. Maybe. Hopefully this will work.
Fingers crossed.
All right, let's scroll down and see if we have it now. Yay.
Yay.
All right, let's try to connect to the local server. Click on that. Hopefully you remember your password, or maybe it's, well, it's already in there. Okay, so on the top bar next to administration, click on schemas. There you go. Okay, yeah, you're all good. Yay, awesome. Okay, go ahead and maximize the window. Okay, so let's just review some kind of fundamentals of relational databases. Using the Sequila database, I want you to start doing some selects. So give yourself a new tab to work in. You've got a bunch of them open, a bunch of tabs. At the top, it says actors, SQL file 5, whatever. Why don't you close all tabs?
Okay.
Yep. You have to go through a bunch of this. Just give ourselves a nice clean slate to work in.
The Zoom controls are getting in the way.
Yeah, interesting.
Very annoying.
You can drag those controls too.
There we go.
Awesome. You've been doing some of that stuff way back then.
Yeah.
Okay. So
last year.
yeah, we're going to review some of that kind of stuff. So the first thing is, let's explore the structure of Sequila on the left, just using the expandable kind of drop down stuff, right? So look at the tables here. And if you recall, this is kind of like a database for a Blockbuster video type video rental company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever go to a Blockbuster video?
Yes.
Okay, all right, good. Let's just do a couple of simple things. Why don't you select everything from the actor table?
Okay, I don't remember how to do that.
That's totally fine. Select, and then the star selects all columns. So star or asterisk. Oh, no. It's after the word select. Select space star
Okay, so let's start.
from actor. It's the name of the table. Should be lowercase. The way the table is spelled. And then to run it, just above the word select is a lightning bolt. Now look at the error code. What does it say in
No.
response?
No data to be selected.
Right. Now you know that you mean Sequila, but you have 5 or 6 different databases, right? So what I recommend is to include a SQL statement as the first line of your code here that specifies the database to operate against or operate on. So give yourself a couple blank lines and then have the first line be use, and then you give the name of the database. Semicolon. Now run it. And there you go. Okay, so here we have columns. It's interesting that we have actor, first name, last name, and then we have a last updated column. There's just 4 columns there, right?
Mhm.
Now, what can you tell me about that first column, actor ID? What's the importance of that column?
I would say it's sort of an identifier.
What are some characteristics you would need for an identifier?
It's got to relate to whatever information is in the table.
What do you mean by relate? Tell me about that. There's no wrong answers here. I just want to talk through this.
In the sense that it has to have an order, a specific order for you to be able to pull specific information from the table.
Okay. Yeah, you're totally on the right track. If you look at this table, what are each of these little listings that has been selected? What do they call each of these listings?
So each one is an actor.
Right. That's. But I mean, just generically in terms of how a database works. What is each one of these things called? These listings called? They're in a table. And they're called rows.
Okay.
So you have that first row, which is Penelope Guinness, super famous actress. And the next, row is the Nick Wahlberg row, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another term for this is called a record in a table or an entry in a table. They all mean the same thing. It just means we're storing data in tabular form or in a table composed of rows and columns, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you are totally on the right track. We need a way to identify an individual row. You might find the table has 500,000 records in it, 500,000 rows. Or it might have 3, it doesn't matter. You've always got to have some way to uniquely identify. Now, if we were to take the first name and last name, isn't that unique? Like Penelope Guinness, like, is there going to be another actor named Penelope Guinness?
No, it would just take longer to find than just using the ID.
You're right to a certain extent. Have you ever known 2 actors to have the same name?
I'm sure it's occurred.
It has. It has.
Off my head.
Yeah, I don't either off the top of my head, right? I mean, I will tell you that like some of the early actors from the beginning of the 19th century, there were people 50 to 100 years later, they happen to have the same name, but there was no confusion in anybody's mind. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? But it is possible theoretically to have two people the same first and last name, right?
Mhm.
So if we're going to rely upon, you were right, it's slower to look that up. That was a really, really good point. Like if we're going to take the combination of first and last name, well, that means we have to, there's more comparisons to be done to verify we found the exact row we want, right?
Mhm.
And by the way, there's another aspect of this uniqueness. If we were going to take first and last name, for example, and use the combination of those two things as our unique identifier, if there were already a Penelope Guinness in this table, and we tried to add another Penelope Guinness, it shouldn't let us, should it? It says, no, this combination, you've defined that as what makes a row unique. I already have a row with that unique characteristic. You can't enter this data in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but wouldn't you be able to enter in another row with the same exact name but with a different ID? Or are we assuming
Yeah,
that?
and that's what we're getting. Exactly. That's another reason why this actor ID has even more value. There's a couple high level points here. One is that in order for this tab, these tables of data and the rows in them, in order for this system to be valuable and workable, we do need a way of uniquely identifying any one individual entry. And yes, we do, in fact, in this database, use a number, the actor ID, right? And you'll see that every other table uses an ID for each row. But what we're talking about is the fact that it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. What if we didn't have an actor ID column at all, and we simply decided that the first and last name combination is what we're going to look for uniqueness in? And we're talking through whether or not that's practical. And it isn't ultimately, because while it's really rare, you could have two people with the same first and last name. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So this whole concept we're talking about falls under the category of what's called a key. A key in a database is some piece of data or combination of multiple pieces of data that can uniquely identify a row. That's what a key is. Now, you expand on that, and there's a couple of different kinds of keys we care about. But it's an important concept is realize that while almost everybody will set aside a separate column just to put that key in, it isn't the only way to do it. You were very bright to think of, well, we could use first and last, it would just be harder to look it up. But we could do it. What you need to be concerned with when you're designing these things is, how do I guarantee uniqueness? And to be honest, usually the simplest way is to add an extra column, because recognize that the column called actor ID is not the data we care about when we're running our store. We care about the names of the actors for the most part. So we've added this separate column called actor ID, but it has a very valuable function if we're going to store all of this data in tables. Making sense so far?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So another thing you'll find is that it isn't always numbers. Have you heard of what's called a GUID? G-U-I-D? Go to pull up a browser and let's just look that up. Type GUID meaning. G-U-I-D meaning. Globally unique identifier. It's a text string. representing an ID. Go ahead and click on that article. It'll probably have some examples of GUIDs. Scroll down, right, look right there. See that format, 8444412. That's very often how they're formatted. So these IDs are a combination of letters and numbers. It's just you don't need to know all the inner workings of how a GUID works. Just know that it's almost impossible to have two entries in a table that have the same GUID. Cool?
Yeah.
Okay. But again, most of the time, you'll just use decimal numbers. All right, let's go back to the database. So we talked about a key. Can you describe key in your own words, what a key is in a table?
I'd say it's a unique set of pieces of information.
Unique on what basis? Like per row is the aspect of that fleshes out the definition. Yes, it's unique per row, like each row has one of these, right? Okay, good. So let's add to this a little bit. The type of database that you're working in right now is called a relational database. We're using tables, and any one table is meant to store the same kind of data in it. Here we're storing actor data. Let's open up another tab.
Okay, I forget how to do that.
I changed a little bit in this version, so I think if you go to the top left, right above the word administration, I think that does, yeah. So let's put down use Sequila again, so we make sure we're accessing the right database. So yeah, good. And now let's look at everything inside the film table. So select star from film. And let's run that bad boy. So now there's a whole bunch of other things in here. We have titles, descriptions, release years, all that. But look at that first column. We're using the same thing, a key. Now, something interesting here, though. You look over about 4 or 5 columns, you'll see language ID. You see that column? What the heck is that? Does the number 1 tell you anything about language?
No.
Okay, let's open up yet another tab. And I want you to select everything from the language table. So we have 6 languages that this company kind of tracks for its movies. And look at that first column, language ID. Go back to the previous tab where we're looking at movies or films. And now look at that language ID column. What do you think that column is telling us?
But all of these movies are in English.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. Go and go keep it scrolled to the left and let's talk about the first column here, film ID. Now that is in fact a key, right? It's a unique identifier. Every single row in this film table has a film ID that's unique. You'll never find it repeated in the whole table, right? You follow that?
Yes.
Okay, good. That kind of key is called a primary key. Primary meaning the main one related to the current table you're in. So we're in the film table,
Mhm,
and the film ID is the key for this table.
mhm.
The language ID column also holds a key, but it's not the key for this table, is it?
No.
Over in the language table, switch to that for a second. We have a column called language ID. And those numbers are the primary key for this table, right?
Mhm.
Now let's go back to the film table again for a second. That language ID column is in fact a key. It's a unique identifier, but not for this table. It points to a valid key in another table. More precisely, it points to a valid primary key in another table, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So this next statement is pretty important. From the point of view of the film table, that column called language ID is called a foreign key. It contains key information for a distant table, for another table, for a foreign table.
Mhm.
So the primary key here is film ID. The foreign key is the language ID table column, right?
Mhm.
Good. Now, the way they designed these two tables, the columns in each table happen to have the same name. It's language ID here, and it's language ID in the other table, isn't it? In this table, the film table, it doesn't have to have the same name. You could call it language instead of language ID. You could call it foobar. You could call it Dana_Lopez.
But then how would you know that it's the same exact key?
I'll show you. Go to the left where you have the expandable tables and expand the film table. And expand indexes. And right click on primary. Never mind. Click away from that to make it go away. Let's see. Right click on film, the actual table name itself. All right. I'm just not used to this editor. What I want to do is create the SQL that would end up making this table. Why don't you double click on the word primary? Let me see what happens. Anything happen?
It added primary to
Oh,
here.
all right. That's not what I want. All right. I'll find this. I'll find it in a second. Just let me explain this and then we'll find where it is.
Okay.
A relational database is composed of what are called schemas. And a schema is the collection of tables and definitions for the relationship between the tables. That's a schema. So we have defined a relationship between the film table and the language table. And that definition says the language ID column over here in film points to the language ID column over in the language table.
Mhm.
And they have a relationship, and that relationship is a foreign key relationship. Now let's see how we do that. Go to Google MySQL Workbench, script out existing table. MySQL, MySQL Workbench, script out existing table.
Existing table?
Yep. How to get a table creation script. Yeah, click on that. Ooh. All right, copy that show create table. Copy that. Let's open up a new tab. Put down, I'll use Sequila. And then paste that in. And then change the table to film. No, you need the create table. But then the name of it isn't URL alias. The name of the table is film. Let's run that and see if it works. Oh, good. Okay. So you see where the down below in the results, click on the create table column there. You see it says create table film and then parentheses, click on that and see if you can do Control C to copy it or Command C. And maybe open up VS Code and open up a brand new blank, something where we can look at the contents. Now I want a new one. I want a new tab because we're going to set the language on it.
Oh, okay.
There we go. Yeah. Yeah, call it film.sql. No, SQL. Sorry. Yeah, and that way it'll auto format. So paste that in. Yeah, now go and maximize that bad boy. Scroll to the left. All right. So this SQL executed against the database would create the table that we have. So the top part of it, the create table, go to the end of line 1 and just put your cursor right next. Yeah, you see everything inside the parentheses is all of the details about the table, all of its columns, its primary key, right? Now, let's look at lines 2 through 14. Those are the columns. What's the name of the column? What type of data goes in there? Does it allow nulls? Like, can there be no data? If it says not null, you can't have a null column in a particular row. That's just a bunch of, that's all the columns. And we can look at that in some detail. Let's look at line 15. Ooh, that's interesting. It tells us what we already knew from using it. We have defined the primary key. It's the column we created on line 2 called film ID, right? Now, there's 3 other keys that we're going to create. We're going to create a key on title. It's not the primary key. We're going to create a key on language ID and one on original language ID. Now, those last 2 keys that we made on line 17 and 18, on line 19, we do some magic. Now, never mind all this SQL in front of you. Let me just ask you a question. How many languages did we have in the language table?
6, I believe.
Right. And they have primary keys 1 through 6, right? Okay. So let's go back to the MySQL Workbench and bring up the film results, whatever tab it was that had film results.
Let me hide this again. So this one.
There it is. Erase the word primary. That was just me trying to figure out what's going on. Okay, so let's say a new shipment came in and we have to add in new movies, right? We have to add in Top Gun Maverick, which was amazing. When we enter in the new row, we, of course, it needs to be given a new film ID, right? And then we need to give the title and the description and everything. What are we going to put in for language ID when we enter the new row in? Let's say it's an English film.
You have to put in one.
Yeah, perfect. What happens if we screw up and put in the number 7?
It changes the language ID.
Yeah, now go look at the language table. You have it in the next tab. Do we have an entry in this table with a primary key of 7?
No.
So we just entered a lie in our database. Go back to the film tab. We've entered a row that has a language ID of 7. We're saying, hey, in this column in the row we just created for Top Gun Maverick, in the column called language ID, I put some data that points to a valid row in another table. And that isn't true, is it? Because there isn't a primary key of 7 over in that other table, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do we enforce that? What should happen is it should reject adding the new row and say, try again. There isn't any language ID of 7. The way we make our database system reject it and not allow us to put wrong data into the database is by adding what's called a constraint. So go back to that script that we were looking at in VS Code. And let's look at line 19. And holy moly, if it isn't adding a constraint. So here's the syntax. It says the word constraint, and the next thing is the name of the constraint. This constraint is called FK film language. What that means is we have a foreign key from the film table to the language table. The constraint has a certain type. There's lots of constraints you can add. They can control what you do on a table. This type of constraint is called a foreign key constraint. The foreign key also has a name. What's the name of the foreign key?
Language ID.
Good. Go back to the workbench for a second. And expand, let's see. Expand foreign keys for the film table. Look at that. Move it to the right a little bit. There's the 2 foreign keys that got made from the film table to the language table and from the film table to the language original table. So go back, or actually they both go to the language table. They just have 2 different foreign keys. So go back to our VS Code and keep looking at this SQL. Again, you don't need to memorize any of the syntax. It's enough to know that there does exist syntax in SQL to control what we already know to be true.
Mm-hmm.
Line 19 is saying, hey, the language ID column is a foreign key. Now, see where it says foreign key in parentheses language ID? Here's what the next few words mean in plain English. I've got a foreign key in this table in the column language ID. It points to or references over in the language table the column over there called language ID. And then there's some other stuff about what kind of behavior to take when this constraint gets violated, or how to implement the constraint. Don't need to worry too much about that. But I said earlier that over in the film table, we could call the column whatever we wanted. We could call it foobar. We could call it Dana Lopez.
Mhm.
This is how. Over on line 6, we'd call it foobar. Now, this is stupid. We're not going to do that. But you can call it foobar, right? And then down on line 19, after the word foreign key, in parentheses, it would say foobar. And it would say that the column over here called foobar references or points to the column in the language table called language ID. Now, that's a really crappy way to design things. So most of the time, you give the columns the same name. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And again, you don't need to memorize any of the syntax. I certainly don't, and I've built a million relational databases. I just know the concept behind it, and then you can always look up the syntax. Any questions about this stuff?
Yes, actually.
I'm ready.
I don't know if this question is really relevant, but say if you were making another row in a table,
Mm-hmm.
the film ID is something that you have to apply yourself, or is that something that's automatically generated?
I want to give you a high five through the computer. That's a brilliant question. In almost all cases, you'll just let the database management system do it. Now let's go back to that VS Code and we'll see what happens in this instance. Go and maximize that again. Look at line 2. At the end of line 2, what does it say?
Auto increment.
Yeah. That means that you don't have to worry about it. When you send the data in to add a new row, you don't include a film ID. You only include everything else. Title, description, release year, language ID, etc. And in fact, you don't even include line 14. Line 14, the database management system takes care of for you.
Would that be the same for GUID?
Yes, if like on line 2, the ID type we're using is a small int, a small integer, right? Small meaning it uses a smaller amount of memory space, which means it has a smaller maximum size than other integers. But I believe, I don't know if it's possible in MySQL, but I know in other database management systems, you can have it be a data type of GUID. Let's look it up. Google data type, MySQL data type GUID. Let's just see if it has one. Go down there under people also ask. Yeah, has it. So yeah, you can do that. That was a good question. Okay, good. So yeah, most of the time you don't have to create it yourself, which is good because you'd have to first read into the database and find the maximum number,
Right.
and then craft your insert. And what if multiple people can actually access the database at the same time? By the time you try to insert your row, maybe the ID you chose got used a few milliseconds before by someone else. So no, you let the database management system take care of it. That's a good question. Now, if you're using these combination keys, like first and last or whatever, right? Then no, you're not going to rely on the database management system to determine that. You're going to have to. So, but again, that's very uncommon. Good question. Other questions?
I think I had one more. Let me just run back to VS Code and see.
This is really good because I'm going to make all the other students like watch this whole video. I mean, they would anyway, but this is something I really wanted to be able to dive in. We didn't have enough time last class, and that question really opened up some understanding. Okay, keep going. Anything else?
So on line 19, where it's saying that foreign key language ID points to language in
Language table.
ID.
Yep.
If this line was not here in the form of the constraint, would the base know this exact phrase, I guess you could say?
Nope.
Okay, so unless you place a constraint, then it's not going to understand that this foreign key references this.
Exactly. Exactly. This is how you define the relationships between tables. This is the root of relational database management system. And if you didn't have that line 19, you could put, for in our silly example before, a language ID of 7. But then when you tried to get the actual language for a film, it would come up with no data. And you wouldn't have anything to display to the user.
So you would have to write constraints that address the relationships between primary key and foreign key.
Yep, exactly. And the SQL that you see on the screen here, this is what was actually used to make that table. One of our students, and you'll see this when you're catching up on the videos, one of our students, Alexandra, the Sequila database, for whatever reason, didn't get installed as part of her installation. And so we had to go out and find 2 different scripts, SQL scripts. One to create all the tables and their relationships, and the second one to insert all of this data that we're using. And if we were going to pour through that first script where it defined all the tables and their relationship, you'd find this exact code right in front of you. And we ran that big long script, and boom, it created her entire database and all the tables and all the relationships. Then we ran the second one, and boom, it inserted all this data. And then she was at the exact same place you are and all the other students were. You'll see that happen when you watch the video. Okay. So, other questions?
No, that's all I have for now.
Let's look at a little bit of practical application of this. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to select information about specific films from a certain actor. So let's go ahead and go back to the MySQL workbench. And let's put a clause at the end of this after line 3, hit enter, and we want only films by, oh no, go to the actor one. Sorry, I think that might be the query 1. Yeah, we only want films from Jennifer Davis.
Okay,
so
I don't remember.
That's totally fine. Go to erase the select, and it's where. This is called a clause. A clause is a conditional, right? Like when you're signing a legal document, you might have clauses in there, like in the event that you flood the property, this is how we handle it. In the event that, you summon a demon in the basement, this is what we do, right? Those are called clauses. Don't do that. I got in big trouble in college. No, I'm kidding. So this is a clause. We're saying in the event that the first name, that the actor ID is, what did we say? Jennifer Davis, is that what we said? Yeah. Well, she's Jennifer Davis. In the event that the actor ID is 4, show me the entries. Okay, so do actor ID equals 4. But you got to spell the column perfectly.
So
Yeah, run that and let's see what happens. So we just have Jennifer Davis's information. Okay, cool. Well, let's do something similar on the film thing. Go ahead and go over to the film. And I just want to see where the ID is, where the film ID is 57, basic, easy. I just want to see that. The 57.
Oh, 57.
Yep. So there's that film, basic, easy. All right, now let's think about, and this is something I did with the students last week, but it's, believe me, number of times through this is valuable, okay? Let's briefly look at, like, if we were going to display information about this film to users, what columns do we want to display and don't we want to display? Let's say we don't care about showing them film ID. We do care about title. We do care about description. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to start specifying the exact columns that we want to select. Right now, we're selecting all columns, right? Now, the syntax that's saying, give me all the columns is on line 3, and it's the asterisk, right? So I want you to go to on that line right after the asterisk and just hit enter a couple of times. Go back up and erase the asterisk because we're no longer going to select all columns. Now, beginning on line 4, we're just going to start listing out the columns we want. The first one we want is title, right? Give me a comma and hit enter. What else do we want? Description. And yeah, give me a release year. We'd want to show them because they might want to clarify. Maybe there's 2 different versions of a film. Now, language ID is utterly useless. We're not going to show them one. Now we're going to handle that in the future. But yeah, rental duration is probably pretty important. And then rental rate, they want to know how much they're going to have to pay. And by the way, sometimes the workbench starts to predict the column you're trying to type. If it does pop up, you can arrow down and hit enter, which is kind of nice. Don't care about length, whatever. Maybe people want to know, yeah, how long is the movie? Yeah, let's do rental. Let's do length. It's not, no, it's just length is the name of the column. You see it down below? Yeah, I messed up. And
maybe
then
rating.
Yeah, they definitely know the rating. Replacement cost, I wouldn't worry about that unless somebody loses it and we'll handle it then. All right, and then special features, they can figure it out when they get the movie home. Okay, so erase the comma at the end of 10 because we're done with our list. And yeah, pull that down so we can see our SQL a bit better. Let's run this and see what we got. Okay, good. All right, now let's add something new. And this is something I didn't cover last week. Let's say I want the name of the data to be a little more user-friendly. Instead of rental underscore duration, I'd rather have the words rental duration be the name of the column. So on line 7, right after the word rental duration, but before the comma, type the word as. Now and then you're gonna do an alias for this column. You can name it whatever you want. We're gonna give it a name that has a space in it. We're gonna give it rental space duration. So you need to put it inside of square brackets. Now that might not be the right syntax. It's blowing up a little bit. Yeah, okay. Let's Google MySQL column alias syntax. Column alias syntax. Make the queries more readable. We'll click on that bad boy. Scroll down, let's just see what the syntax looks like. Oh, single quotes. You see it?
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, I really didn't like those square brackets at all. Let's run this and see what it looks like. Look at that, rental duration. That's a more friendly name.
Mhm.
Let's do the same for release year and rental rate. All right. I like that. That's a little more readable, isn't it?
Mhm.
Okay. Now, this is pretty cool. That'll be some nice information that we could send to, say, a web page, and then whoever the front end designer was could make it look really pretty, right? But we still have a problem with the language thing. So we're in the film table, and we know that our language ID column here is a foreign key over to the language table, right? So we need to reach over to that other table and get that information. Do you remember the SQL concept that lets you connect it to another table? It's called a join. So we're going to join from the film table over to the language table. Okay. So let's build this. At the end of line 12, go to the end of line 12 and hit enter a couple of times. And right in here, can you backspace once on line 12 because it's kind of screwing up the formatting. There you go. Okay. Right in here is where we're going to start building our join. We're going to connect from one table to the other. Now, what we're looking for is a column in this table, film, that has data that corresponds to a column in the other table, language. What column in this film table corresponds to the language table?
Either title or description.
That doesn't correspond to the language table at all, right? Go look at the language table again. I think you have it in your third tab.
Oh, the language ID.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go back to that join we're going to build. And we're going to join from one table to another. And you just specify the column in one table and the column in the other table to correspond. Now the syntax, you can always look up. So join, and space, and then give the name for the other table. Hit enter. And now you're going to say on space, and then we'll list the two columns and put an equals in between them. We're saying when the column over here is equal to the column over there, that's when we join them. So we need to specify the table in the column here before the equals. So let's do film table. So film dot, and then the column.
Wait, I'm doing.
No. Okay, let me back up.
Yeah.
Right here, actually erase film, and then just space out a few bit. You just hit the space bar a little bit. No, the space bar.
Sorry.
A few times, a little bit over, and put an equals sign. Okay. On one side of this equal sign, you're going to have an exact column. Now, when I say exact, that means the table it's in and the name of the column. On the right side, you can have another exact column, which means you have to specify the table it's in and the name of the column. So on the left, we'll put the film table. So type film to the left of that. And then dot, and then which column do we care about?
The language ID.
Yeah, so type that out. And on the other side of the equals, what's the column or the table we care about?
Language table.
Awesome. And over in that table, what's the name of the column?
I think is it also language ID? Yeah.
Yep, there it is. Well done on checking. Okay, now that is a join. You're saying join from the table I'm already in. And when I say already in, that means you started doing a select from the film table. So we're in the film table. Now we're going to join over to the language table. And then we immediately have to specify, okay, what column in each of these tables do I look for a match in? Make sense?
Yes.
Now execute this bad boy and let's see what happens. Now, it did the join. One thing we didn't do, go and scroll down on the results so we can see a lot more of our code. One of the things we didn't do is we didn't select any of the columns in that second table. So in our select, like maybe right after the word rating, on line 10, go down to line 11, hit a comma, and then specify the column. We want the name of the language. So what table is that name in? Like English, French, whatever. Good. So type language dot, language is the table, dot, and then its name, isn't it? Run that bad boy. Holy moly. Now we have the actual language for that movie. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
Now, if we had entered in Top Gun Maverick and we had the French version of it, go to the language table tab. So 5. So let's say we entered in a whole new film, Top Gun Maverick, and we had 5. When we pull up Top Gun's information, but we've joined over to the language table, it'll show us the word French. So go and go back to that join and look at it again. Any questions about what we've done here?
No.
Okay. All right. Now, when you catch up, you'll hear a lot more detail about what I'm about to tell you to do. So I'll go kind of quickly, but you'll be able to see it at your leisure when you catch up. You know how we, on lines 6, 7, and 8, we had an alias for the column, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, especially when you have really long table names, you want aliases for your tables that you're joining as well. Watch this. Let's give an alias to the film table that's just F. So go to the end of line 13, space, and do as, and then a lowercase f. And then same thing on 14. Let's call it L, join language as L. And now, this part's important. Anywhere that we've referenced the film table after this, you can use the letter F. So line 15, let's use the letter F for the film table. Same thing there, use L for the language table. But it also means it's effects earlier, up on line 11, we're using the language table, you have to use the alias.
So if I were to leave language there, would it still recognize what I'm trying to do? Or
Let's find out. I'm going to put it back. Run it. Error code, unknown column language.name. So no, it doesn't. It reads through the whole script before it executes it, which is another interesting thing to know. When you're running JavaScript code, it doesn't work that way. There's an analyzer inside this program you're using, and it knows all the rules for SQL. And when you tell it to run a script, it doesn't just start at the top and go. It actually scans through the whole thing, figures out whether or not it's actually valid, and only then runs it, which is kind of cool, huh? So go ahead and change that to L, and let's see if it'll work. And look at that. Look at everything we want. So that's a bit on joins, okay? And what's cool is you're actually now to the point that the rest of the students are, where I can kind of give a little bit of homework. Your first bit of homework is going to involve something that we ran through as a class exercise. I want to show you something kind of interesting. Let's drop everything about this join, and let's look at a different relationship. Let's look at the relationship of what actors have been in what films, or if you look at a specific film, who are the actors in it? That's kind of an interesting thing. That's pretty valuable information, right?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and collapse the film table for a second. On the left, yeah. There you go. You have a film table and you have an actor table. We've looked at both of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at that film-act or film_actor table. Look at the columns, expand that. Now, what's missing from here, you know, almost all the other tables, if it's a film table, it has a film ID. It's the primary key, right? If it's a customer, expand customer, and it'll have a customer ID. Try that. Expand customer on the left there. Look at the columns. There's a customer ID. Go ahead and collapse customer. What the heck is with this film actor table? It doesn't have a film actor ID. It doesn't have any kind of, well, let's see what's in there. Give me a new tab, and I want you to select all the records in there. You don't have to capitalize it, by the way.
Oh, okay.
It's nice for readability, but you don't have to. Yeah, so from the film actor table. This is kind of interesting. What do you think this table is telling us?
It's giving us the specific actor's ID and telling us which films that actor is in, maybe.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So actor ID 1, do you remember what her name is?
No.
I think it's, I don't know, go back to the query number 1, I think has it. Yeah, look at query number 1 and change the number 5, the clause, to 1. Penelope Guinness. So now go back to that other table. So yeah, you're right. It's saying that Penelope Guinness is in film 1, 23, 25, 106, etc., right? She's in a lot of films. Now, you can look at this table another way. You should also be able to see for a given film which actors are in it, right? So why don't we add another line after line 3, and we'll Right now it's being ordered by actor ID. If you go scroll down in the results, it goes 1, 2, 3. You see, it's ordering by actor ID. Let's order it by the film ID. So order by film ID. That's it. Run that. Scroll this up again. So look at that. We see everyone who's in film number 1. There's like 7 or 8 or 9 actors in film number 1. And you scroll down, you can see everybody in film number 2. This is a pretty valuable little table, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's an official name for this kind of a table. That other table, the language table, that can be called a lookup table because you can look up what language. You can look up the data you need, right? I've seen this described as a cross lookup table or a mapping table. The exact terminology is less important than the concept, which you grasped right away. And we don't need a unique identifier for each row here because we don't care so much about any one individual row. We care about looking up relationships, right? Yeah. So what I want you to work out right now is how to find out how to join these tables together. The actor table into the film actor table and over to the film table, all 3 of them. So you can start to look up all the actors in a given film or all the films a given actor's been in. You want to build that?
I'll attempt. So it would be join.
Here's what we're going to do. Just because we're at time right now. Okay. Yeah. That's your homework.
Okay.
Okay. Now you're allowed to cheat. And by that, I mean, you can go back to Twitch and look at the most recent class from last Wednesday or whatever. And we did this. Okay. So if you get stuck, go look through the stream. Okay. Okay. But you're literally going to start in film, go to film actor, and then go to actor. And it's going to be one join and then a second join. You'll have 2 joins. Okay. Because the joins are between the tables. So table number 1, a join. Table number 2, a join. Table number 3. Cool?
Yeah.
Awesome. So there's your homework. Any questions before we end off?
No, none at all.
Thank you for staying up late for it. Appreciate it. I'm glad you're here. Didn't realize it would be a class of 1, but you know what? That's their loss. They'll have to catch up. And we'll see you again on Wednesday, hopefully with a bigger class.
Okay. Thank you for having me. See you soon.
Absolutely. Have a good night.